Let's get some reaction to that developing story on the energy front. Also, ASEAN. The Shadow Trade Minister, Kevin Hogan, joins me. Kevin, thanks for your time. Let's start with the nuclear debate. That Peter Dutton and the coalition very much rolling the dice on this. It is a bit of a risk, isn't it?
Well, Kieran, what we think is a bigger risk is putting so much of your energy market reliant on wind and solar. The Albanese government are probably showing more faith in wind and solar than anyone else in the world, aiming for 80% from those sources by 2030. So we think we need, reliable baseload capacity. Obviously, we're committed to lower emissions, and we think nuclear has to be part of that. As I say, there's no other country in the world that is going to be so reliant on having such a big punt on wind and solar.
The Nationals, as you know, you've got a better sense of the region. Now. It'll be welcome in regional Australia, the move to nuclear energy, if you are successful.
Well, look, I think, as Peter just said, where we're looking, and we would have to have community acceptance of this, and the policy will be announced in more detail in a couple of months. But, obviously we have some large coal-fired generation capacity. If it was to be put in those places, that would make a lot of sense. One, because the transmission system would support that. So if you were to basically plunk a nuclear power station where a coal-fired power station was, obviously the emission reduction is there, but you don't have to build this new transmission system that Labor have to under their wind and solar capacity. As we know, the big solar factories, the big wind factories that Labor are planning are nowhere near transmission systems, so the cost of that is going to be huge, and the social licence across farmland and other things is still yet to be worked out. So, we think this is a very important discussion, obviously, but, this will be ongoing over the next year or so.
It certainly will. It's not a small target, let's say that. And as I mentioned, you're the Shadow Trade Minister. You've raised concerns, Kevin, about the government's vehicle emission standards and its impact on our trading partners in Southeast Asia and the ASEAN group. But isn't it fair to say that a lot of those trading partners further afield, certainly out of Korea and so on, Hyundai, Kia, have welcomed the government's moves? Other suppliers of vehicles from Europe, like VW and Volvo, also welcome the government's vehicle emissions changes. Well,
look, the manufacturers I spoke to last week obviously understand that we need these new emission standards, but what they've said to me is that these timelines are too aggressive. So what we've been saying, because it's not us saying this, Kieran, it's the manufacturers that are telling us that given the very tight timeline for this to happen to 2029, these are very aggressive by worldwide standards, and it's going to increase the price of your SUV and your ute. And what we've had on Friday is the Thailand Prime Minister say exactly the same. The penalties and or fines that the government's regulation will put on these manufacturers, these car producers, is going to add to the cost of them. So that's not us saying that, that's the Thai Prime Minister saying that, that's the manufacturer saying that. So we all understand about emissions reductions through fuel, but the timeline this government has set means that prices are going to go up because the technology isn't there yet for what they're trying to achieve. Even a hybrid, Kieran, that we now produce or would now come into our country won't meet these guidelines by 2027. So that's, obviously hybrids, lower emissions, but these are very aggressive standards, and that's why we don't think they're okay.
So you're not opposed to the move in the direction of vehicle emission standards. You think that that's the right path, but it's simply the timeline that's causing headaches at the moment.
Yeah, look, as new technology gets developed, obviously this will all work, and it will work in a way that's still cheap. It still doesn't affect cost of living and buying new vehicles. So as the technology's developed, we can move to these types of targets. But again, the only country actually that has a similar target to what the Labor government has set is America, and they're actually about 2 or 3 weeks ago announced that they're going to start to move away from those targets, because I'm sure they're told as well by the manufacturers that the technology and the timeline don't fit, and therefore the cost has to go up, and that doesn't suit anyone in a cost of living crisis.